Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the next panel discussion on the future of aerospace. Please welcome to the stage Juan de Bedout, Chief Technology Officer of RTX, Robert A. Geckle, Jr., Chairman and CEO of Airbus U.S. Space and Defense, and Liz Young McNally, Deputy Director for Commercial Operations at the Defense Innovation Unit. The conversation will be moderated by Brandi Vincent, Pentagon Correspondent at AIScoop.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brandi from AIScoop and Defense Scoop. Really excited to hear this discussion today. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to SCSP for hosting this stellar event. At this panel, we're going to talk about the future of aerospace at a time when we're seeing rapid advancements in this realm, sparked by both government and private sector-led initiatives, and as U.S. military players are investing heavily in hypersonic technologies, AI-powered autonomous flight, and next-generation fighter jets, and other emerging options for air and space defenses. Beyond all that, significant breakthroughs in aerospace are expected to redefine both everyday travel and the Pentagon's playbook for the 2030 battle space. I'm excited to be joined on stage by a trio of experts who bring very unique expertise to this discussion. We've got Liz McNally from DIU, Rob Geckle from Airbus, and Juan de Bedout from RTX. And we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So Juan, I want to kick the conversation off with you. RTX provides a wide variety of products and services for commercial and military and government customers. And you guys also design and manufacture avionics systems and in-demand aircraft. What are some of the key trends that you're watching in this space, and how might AI influence some of this down the line?
Thank you, Brandi. Can you guys hear me? Thank you, Brandi, and it's great to be here. I would say that in both the aerospace and the defense sectors, the key trend is growth. When you look at commercial aerospace, it is clearly recovered from the blip, the COVID blip. We are back on a trend where we're seeing air traffic essentially double every 20 years. So we have around 10 billion passengers forecasted for 2025. It'll be 20 billion by 2045. So incredible growth, and that's going to drive incredible volume of aircraft in the sky. It's good for our friends at Airbus and Boeing. But from an AI perspective, think about more density in air traffic corridors. You're going to see more aircraft in tighter formations. And one of the key focuses for AI is in helping to manage that increase in density. We see an important role for AI both in the cockpit supporting pilots and on the ground supporting air traffic managers. In the cockpit, you can see an important role for AI in terms of helping the pilots maintain attention on flying the aircraft and taking over more mundane types of tasks like trolling through safety issues, fault issues, managing communications, managing trajectory replanning. Those types of things are great roles for AI that can augment the capabilities of pilots and keep their attention on flying the plane. On the ground, same thing. So we see an important role for AI to improve situational awareness with the increasing complexity that air traffic managers are going to see in their environments. We've developed technologies on the defense side that help battlefield commanders manage increased complexity, deconfliction of airspace in battlefield spaces. They can do trajectory planning in those environments in a dynamic and flexible way. Those same technologies can help on air traffic management side. So again, a story of growth, a lot of implications for the industry on many fronts, but from an AI perspective, that's a good example. And then on the defense side, I would say it's also a story of growth. It's driven by the geopolitical tensions that we see in the world today. One trend that I would highlight is really the use of coordinated mass to overwhelm integrated air and missile defense systems. You've seen it in Ukraine, you've seen it in Israel, and our systems have been very effective in combating that, but it's a trend that is important for us to pay attention to. So there's a keen interest in integrated air missile defense. You see it in Golden Dome. The Golden Dome for America is a essentially an enlargement of that principle to cover the continental United States. And there's going to be an important role for AI in supporting that as well. And again, managing the complexity, helping prioritization, helping with situational awareness.
And since you mentioned it really quick, can you chat about sort of what your role within the big picture Golden Dome, your company's role within the big picture Golden Dome looks like? How are y'all thinking about that?
So we actually play throughout the full Golden Dome construct, Brandi. So I would say at the base level, we have a role in terms of supporting counter UAS, UAS systems, counter UAS systems, cruise missiles. We also have the systems that will combat intercontinental ballistic missiles and hypersonic glide vehicles. And so that's both radar systems, it's interceptors, but we have a full portfolio that supports Golden Dome from the base level all the way to the top tier, and I would say including space. So we play throughout.
Thank you for that. It'll be exciting to watch it all come together too. Rob, Airbus designs and makes commercial aircraft as well as capabilities for the defense space and helicopter industries. What can you share about some of the company's ongoing work with DoD and the U.S. military, specifically as it pertains to the future of autonomous flights?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, Brandi, and really appreciate Juan's comments, which are really insightful. So in terms of autonomy and autonomous flight and use of AI, it is a huge trend, both in civilian and defense space. Airbus has been involved in autonomous systems for decades, particularly in Europe with some of the exquisite systems they have there. As you leave the global war on terror and move into near-peer deterrence and those adversaries, the level of autonomy that you need has to work in a denied and contested environment, in an environment where you're not going to have potentially GPS. And so in Europe, from the shareholder perspective, we're spending a lot of time working on future combat air systems, manned-on-manned teaming, which means you have a pilot who's controlling loyal wingmen, collaborative combat aircraft. And in the US, we're spending a lot of time looking at some of our legacy platforms, our aircraft, our helicopters, and seeing how we can turn them into uncrewed vehicles. In fact, we're working with the Marine Corps right now in taking our Lakota helicopter. We have 500 of them in service for the Army and Army National Guard, and self-investing to turn that into an autonomous uncrewed vehicle that would be able to operate in contested environments for logistics. And what we've done in the US really is take a partnering strategy. So we're working with Shield AI for the autonomy backbone, and L3, who's helping us with the modular open systems architecture so that we can tie into multi-domain sensors. And we're looking across our portfolio of products where we can take heritage platform that's affordable, there's hot production lines, there's support and sustainment in place, and deliver that at value in an autonomous environment.
I'm excited to see that come together. And is the notion with the helicopter, obviously you're early in the process, but that down the line it would be the same helicopter, but it could be manned or unmanned?
Yeah, so typically, and not every program is the same, and we'll see what NAVAIR and U.S. Marine Corps want to do, and the Army also will need a solution for contested logistics. But it's not uncommon for programs like this to go first to optionally piloted and then eventually no pilots. And the attribute of having no pilots is if you're doing logistics, you can take the cockpit out and now you can load containers from four sides, from the back, from the sides, from the rear, and that's a real value proposition when you're in a contested environment. But it's also not uncommon in civil operations to look at single pilot operations. All the AI attributes that Juan was talking about will aid in that capability. But ultimately, for a lot of these missions, you want to have an unmanned vehicle because you don't want to put the pilot at risk in those environments.
Absolutely. And one last thing, what is sort of the timeline when you see unmanned helicopters being used in military operational environments?
Well, there's already quite a bit of eVTOL capabilities being used operationally today. The attributes of a rotorcraft is because of the payload and the range and the capacity, but the technology, the sense and avoid technology, it exists today. The question is, how can you deliver sufficient capacity and mass at scale to fit those mission requirements? And we have other products in our portfolio that are more tactical and smaller payloads that are maybe ISR or kinetic in nature. So it's mostly about engaging with the DoD and understanding the mission requirements, and then seeing where do we invest our innovation dollars to step to those challenges. In this particular case, we think a readily available helicopter that's affordable fits. In other cases, it could be a stratospheric platform, or it could be a tactical eVTOL, or we will partner with our friends at Raytheon to see if maybe we can team together and find a different solution.
Great, and I think the focus on affordable will continue to get more and more important as we go. Liz, hi, thank you for joining us. I want to talk a little bit about DIU. How does the Innovation Hub really fit into this conversation about the future of aerospace? And can you share anything new about the unit's air and space enabling portfolio, particularly with AI?
Happy to. Thanks so much for having me. And the last comments were both spot on. For those of you who don't know, DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit, is the organization within the department tasked to bring commercial and dual-use technology in with speed and scale for strategic effect. And you can really think of us as, a broker really helping understand what the warfighter needs are, like the very pressing, timely warfighter needs, especially from the combatant commands, but other areas as well. And then on the other hand, working closely with the services who are ultimately going to scale those different capabilities and helping sit in the middle. And we've really pioneered a more rapid way to bring that commercial technology in. And we're doing a tremendous amount within aerospace and our space portfolio. We have 7 different technology portfolios, and I think all of them, I didn't do the analysis ahead of time, but I'm sure all of them really touch into aerospace and defense. So we think of that sort of cross-cutting across them. But as I think about that, and with AI in particular, some of the big areas, and it's building on comments that were already shared. One has to really do with C2 and command and control, and how are we using AI, whether it's to help build common operating pictures, for decision support, for collaborative teaming. I think that's really, there's a lot of real innovation happening there. I mean, think of the drone races in the future, but they're all collaborating with each other, right? And there is a human sort of a step backwards from there. So that's one big area. A second big area has to do with what I would call like the different enablers. And there, I think you can use commercial technology even more. We worked on something called air logistics optimization, which is around how do you use AI so that you can do flight planning far more efficiently. So all of your flights are full, you can reduce fuel, you can increase cargo capacity. It's not very sexy, but like it makes a huge difference. We are using AR and VR to totally transform pilot training. Pilot training is right now expensive. You have to fly to a place. It's a whole thing. Instead, if you use the best and best from the gaming industry, you can transform how we train pilots. And then I think the third area that we're now really just getting going on, and I'm excited about, has to do with how we're manufacturing. So whether it's advanced manufacturing, thinking about digital engineering, there's a lot of different processes associated with that we'll be able to apply. So as we think about whether it's manufacturing an overall platform or the parts associated with it, we'll be able to do that very differently and hopefully at scale and a lot cheaper.
And I know that DIU has really been a forward player when it comes to really accelerating the acquisition process, being innovative with acquisition. Can you talk a little bit about sort of any new updates there and work you're doing in that space?
Sure, absolutely. So, when DIU started, we had to figure out what was the way we were going to actually bring those commercial products in and do it in a way that was easy and lowered the barriers to entry for commercial companies who had never worked with the Department of Defense before. And so we pioneered the commercial solution opening process. And, I'm proud to say year in, year out, you can look at our stats. roughly 40% of the companies who win a new CSO every year, this is the first time they'd ever worked with the DoD. And so we've built all of these processes, so we're asking a problem statement as opposed to a requirement. It's a short response, right? Like a few pages or a few slides as opposed to something more, very rapid. And one of the processes that we have built to help not just do it ourselves, but then scale it across the department is something called the ICAP Fellowship. So we have other acquisition officers from across the department who can apply, do a year-long fellowship with DIU, learn our process, how we work with industry, and then bring that back to wherever they're going. It just opened today, so if there's any acquisition officers in the audience or tuning in from somewhere, really hoping to see those applications. Secretary Hegseth's recent memo on software acquisition also talked about the CSO process, and we're also working very closely with A&S and others in the department to implement the president's new executive order on acquisition. And programs like that fellowship are a real way that we're going to be able to help upskill and train and drive the culture change that's going to be required so that we bring in more commercial technology.
Thanks for announcing something new, and any acquisition innovators, pay attention to that. ICAP. Another big area in this space that we can't ignore, I think pretty much every panel I've sat on, it's come up, is drones and autonomy. They're already a proven game changer. You can look all over the world where combat is and isn't happening. Liz, how is DIU working with commercial partners on UAS and especially counter-drone pursuits? And what does these disruptive technologies really present when you think about the future?
I mean, if anyone hasn't read everything you can read about what happened with the Ukrainian drone attacks in Russia and the airfields right now, just go read those. Just actually stop listening to me right now, go read those, and then we don't have to answer the question of how it's fundamentally changing the nature of war. And we're doing all we can with our partners in other parts of the department to really get after that. If I talk first on the drone side, then I'll come back to the counter UAS side. But I think I'm hopeful for a real pivot. I mean, I was excited when General George talked recently how he wants, every division in the Army to have 1,000 drones. We just need to get this in the hands of the warfighter so we start learning how to use it and then sharing across. I think, efforts like the drone racing we see is a great part of that. And so, we have done a number of different things. DIU has run what's been called the Blue List to help certify drones. And we recently announced, Doug actually yesterday, so I'll re-announce some of the things that he talked about on stage here for those of you that missed it. But we're actually, in the spirit of trying to help bring even more technology into the department, we're evolving the Blue List. So we're going to actually open it up and have partners help us to certify the drones that will be ultimately cleared for compliance on the list. And that is open right now as well for partners to apply to be our partners in certifying and evaluating that. And what we're also doing is launching a pretty significant prize challenge, upwards of $20 million pending congressional approval, to do a series of prize challenges with different units in the Army and the Marine Corps, where we're, again, bringing in that technology, putting it in the hands of warfighters, letting them select, what are the capabilities that they want to have. So that's to sort of get after it offensively. But as we looked at what happened over the weekend, we really have to get after it defensively as well. And so we're working very closely on counter UAS. I think it's different when you're thinking about counter UAS in the homeland and on bases and in areas like that, as well as counter UAS when we're thinking about it on ships or other things. We're working across those, and it's really a different answer for each of those. Some of the big areas we're working on right now is the C2. So AI, plays a big role there in terms of the C2 and the decision support processes with regard to counter UAS. We're working on low collateral defeat. So there's a CSO we had open recently with regard to how we're going to do that for non-kinetic, as well as really sensing. So there's a challenge out right there. So you can see there's a tremendous amount going on. That's just what DIU's doing. I know there's other partners, but we're going to have to get off after that as fast as we are the drone side.
And it's great to hear that you guys have that as such a priority as well. Juan, back over to you. The Trump administration has set forth an ambitious agenda for building a, quote, state-of-the-art air traffic control system that will be the envy of the world. Does the U.S. industrial base have the technical capability and capacity to modernize this system with the budget set forth between the reconciliation and proposed FY26 budget?
Thanks, Brandi. It's a great question. I would say, do we have the technical capability to do it? Absolutely. We have all of the technical expertise that we need inside of the United States. The industry broadly supports this. It's time. It's overdue. And so we are in agreement with that. I think the industry wholeheartedly supports modernization of aerospace. And what I would say on the budget front is what's in reconciliation is understood by the government to be a down payment for what's going to be a longer journey. But we absolutely have the capability in this country to modernize our airspace.
Yeah. You said you wanted it to be a conversation. So, but just to foot stop what Juan said, I've been in this role for a year, and what I'm continually reminded of is, do we have the technology, or can we do this? That's almost never the problem. Like, the conversations don't even go there, right? Like, it's just assumed we're America, we're innovators, like we can do this. Most of the technology exists. If it doesn't exist, we can create it. The problem is, how do we bring it in? How do we implement it? How do we change the culture? How do we change the training? All of those other pieces. So just building on what you're saying, in almost every technological area, that's the case.
And I feel like the momentum is palpable right now. Like, DIU's been innovating for a long time, but you can feel there's even more of a momentum there. Rob, I want to chat a little bit about Airbus's record-setting Zephyr high-altitude platform station, HAPS. What does it represent in this discussion about future capabilities, and what's next in its pipeline?
Yeah, so Zephyr, I referenced this a little bit earlier. This is a new R&D project. Well, it's not new, but we're close to fielding it, which is a stratospheric platform. You could call it a pseudo-satellite. It operates at 60,000 feet, and it can loiter for months at a time, very low weight, solar powered, and we're bullish on operationalizing this, particularly for ISR targeting and comms backhaul. The interesting thing about this project is it's similar to a lot of what Airbus does. Airbus is known as a commercial aviation company, and a lot of our defense applications are commercial derivative. That's similar for a lot of our helicopters and our ISR troop transport platforms. And this is a platform where we think could actually provide comms backhaul commercially as well, in addition to providing those services to the military. And the reason why I like stepping to dual use projects is it helps burn down the non-recurring costs, which makes it easier for the government and the taxpayer, and it's easier to make that business case work. So I can't really talk too much about what we're doing with it this year, but I'm really bullish on this. And since this is an AI conference, I can also say part of the roadmap there is the full autonomy of the platform to be working in a denied environment, as I mentioned. The beauty of being at 60,000 feet is you are typically outside the normal engagement zone, outside of contested space, very hard to see, very affordable. And there's only one of a kind in terms of the capabilities. So, and I would say back to DIU, for a company that's known for commercial aviation, is a bit of a non-traditional in the U.S., and that's what we are. In the defense space, we're a non-traditional commercial company that is modifying commercial capabilities for the military. DIU has been a great partner in terms of first entry point to help navigate. Well, first time I heard Blue UAS, I said, well, what's that? And helping us understand, what does your supply chain need to look like so that you can qualify as Blue UAS, and DIU is a great partner to help companies that are not necessarily the traditional primes like Raytheon and navigate working with the U.S. government on an R&D type project.
Thank you. You got me thinking too, in your answer, because I know Airbus does a lot of work for the commercial space as well as the defense space. As you guys are designing and thinking through these prototypes and new capabilities, for the defense space, do you automatically start with it needs to operate in austere environments?
Typically it depends, and we do have some programs where we start, but I would say more often than not, Airbus as a company will start with a commercial platform and then look to modify it and harden it so they can operate in a military environment. So we're building satellites for Space Force, Space Development Agency, which we think actually will fit well into Golden Dome because it's for the missile tracking capability. That started as a commercial satellite bus. We have 600 in orbit, and we were able to modify that with the government and do payload integration in a classified environment so that it fits the military customer. So unlike, I would say, your traditional defense companies, we tend to come and like, how can we have an affordable business case for the government by modifying readily available technology where that massive investment is not for the taxpayer to take? Yes, there are costs to modifying and adapting it, but that has been, a winning formula for us to date.
Liz, in the opening you mentioned advanced manufacturing and how that's another significant contributor to advancements here. Can you spotlight a little bit of DIU's work? And then something I've kind of been thinking about is essentially whether AI and advanced manufacturing will render our sort of centuries-old production model obsolete. Should we believe that a facility manufacturing an Airbus A380 or AIM-120 cannot be quickly modified to build components for a fast attack submarine or an attack drone?
This is another topic that I think is really taking off, and it ties in with the broader conversations about revitalizing the industrial base and how are we going to get after that, the workforce shortages, all of those different pieces, and it gets down to you have to do it fundamentally differently. You can't just redo what you were doing before, and again, because of the advances in technology, we're now able to do that. Two different areas that I'm happy to spotlight. One is we're working to help create a marketplace to identify different advanced manufacturing companies that can do it in a number of different areas, whether it's 3D printing, different types of processing, et cetera. And we're going to go and certify them and make sure that they meet some minimum standards with regard to cybersecurity, foreign influence, that sort of thing. And then have a marketplace out there so various companies that want to work with them can see them out there. So we're bringing our commercial innovation to just create that marketplace on behalf and use that to help spur broader change. In addition to that, we're looking at specific areas where we want to help really pathfind, which is a lot of what DIU does. So one area that we're doing that right now was a solicitation around how do you think about using advanced manufacturing to manufacture cast metal parts that are required, in an exquisite weapon system. What we've come to learn is oftentimes there's a few parts, right, that keep failing, and what if we're able to build them differently? So that's another example. Why we're doing the second one gets to your question. Can you build, this universal factory of the future? And I'd be curious, both of your thoughts. You've probably spent far more time in factories than I have. But I think, again, the vision is there that you potentially could. The challenge is, at least on the DoD side, that we're still working through is, currently most different pieces of equipment are built to build a specific part as opposed to multiple different parts. So you have to think about that. And there are new, 3D printing materials, for example, that, could allegedly build this thing, not just allegedly can build this thing today and this thing tomorrow. The DoD, though, has to certify all of those parts, right? And again, we're talking about parts that go on an aircraft, a submarine, that you really cannot allow to fail. So how do we think about certification differently of those parts when it's never happened before? The incentive structure is not there when you think from a risk-taking perspective to lean forward. So part of the reason that we launched that solicitation is to also get after the certification process. But so it's those sorts of things that I think will also have to change within the DoD. The fact that there isn't one central procurement office, right? There's different ones for different PEOs. All of those things would have to come together to really build that universal factory. But I think a lot of the components to get there and the vision is sound. I'd be curious, others' thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it resonates with what you said earlier, which is that the technology exists, and I think there's a lot of what we can do in the commercial aviation space in terms of working in virtual environments and digital twins. When you get into the transatlantic, cross-border, multiple companies doing defense work, you sort of go into the Dante's inner circle of regulatory hell, right? ITAR, security clearance, CUI, cyber. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't step to those challenges and burn them down, but it does require a bit of a regulatory and cultural change. Juan, I don't know what you think.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think integrated development environments in the digital engineering sense are incredibly promising for global collaboration, like you just said. But the other thing I would say is it's impressive how well attuned DIU's ear is to the challenges in the industry. The castings problem that you pointed out is a problem for so many parts of the aerospace sector, and we're working alternatives as well. Additive manufacturing is a great potential, and I think a common cause for a lot of us.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. I think that covers it on the time we have today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Please join me in thanking our stellar panel for this conversation. Have a great one. See you around the conference.